Good afternoon, colleagues. Y 85 na legislatura in Guam is back from recess. Colleagues, we are now on agenda item number 3, Bill 219-35 COR. Senator San Augustine, I will recognize you at this time.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I ask that motion to move to Bill 219-35 be moved to the third reading file, and we'll discuss it.
Sir, if I may, can you read the as amended, who it's authored by, and read the title, please?
All right, thank you. Thank you, Madam Speaker. The bill is Bill 219-35 COR as amended by the Committee on General Government Operation, Appropriation, and Housing. But I would like to also address that I'm going to introduce a substitute on the floor, and I ask the body to accept it. And you want me to go ahead and continue reading it?
Yes, please, if you can substitute it.
Yes, please.
To accept substituted version
Yes.
first and then reread. Okay?
And then I'll read the title?
Yes.
Okay, so I'm asking that the body would accept the substitute of Bill 219-35 as amended by the Committee on General Government Operation, Appropriation, and Housing, and substituted on the floor. It was introduced by myself, co-sponsored by Speaker Tina Rose Munoz Barnes, Senator Will Castro, and Senator Clint Rigel. An act to amend Section 7116 of Chapter 7, Division 2, Title 17, Guam Code Annotated, and to amend Section 5008.2 of Subarticle A, Article 1, Chapter 5, Title 5, Guam Code Annotated, relative to strengthening the purchase or lease back or renewal of renewable energy purchase of service for the Department of Education, the Guam Academy Charter Schools, Guam Community College, and the University of Guam. And Madam Speaker, if allowed to move to for discussion, I will then identify exactly what the substitute is.
No worries,
entail.
sir. On the
Thank
motion
you.
to accept, are there any objections? Seeing or hearing none, motion carries. Senator San Augustine, you may proceed on the motion to move.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Thank you, Madam Speaker and colleagues. In our last session, we discussed...
Senator, I apologize. So can you move to the third reading, the substituted version, and then ask to speak?
If we can please, the body will allow the bill 219-35 to be moved to third reading and I'd like to discuss.
As substituted.
As substituted.
On that motion, Senator San Augustine, please proceed.
Thank you, Madam Speaker and colleagues. In our last session, we discussed on and off the floor the merits that make 219 worth passing in hopes that our educational facilities reap the rewards of going solar, potentially saving millions that may go towards maintenance and capital improvements. Additionally, several amendments were proffered, and we took some time in addressing some of these. At the end of the discussion that last session, I moved to set the bill aside for the purpose of restoring our bearings on this important legislation. Before us today, we have an amended and further substitute bill that addresses all of those concerns. My committee took on the amendments and included them to ensure all concerns were addressed. Let us review the work on the amendments made on the floor and in committee. On page 2 of line 24, page 3, line 8, and page 4, line 15 and 21, we passed the amendments to ensure the calculation of the school power needs were a preceding 36 months versus the original 12-month period. Any language allowing the PPA or sale leaseback to go up to 25 years, not exceeding 40 years, was amended to just up to 25 years. On page 3 of line 24, on this substitute, we removed the words and without application of the procurement law to ensure all processes adhere to procurement law. I know that there were many discussions that it was referring to the Attorney General's office involvement. We've identified that that was only needed for lease schools, not needed for non-lease schools. And on page 4, line 5, we shortened the number of days the Guam Power Authority will have in responding to providing a cost-benefit analysis to 45 days. The reason for that, and I reached out to the Department of Education superintendent, and they said they know what's coming, they've been preparing for it, and they're ready to go. We restored the small letter D in section 7116 to its original language, only making reference amendment to references of GDOE to the term institution. Any reference to a 5-year business license requirement was struck from the legislation. So there's no requirement to have a 5-year, you have to be 5 years on Guam and be experienced and all that. We removed that. I spoke to DOE, and the superintendent says he's fine with that. It'll be the best and the most qualified and experienced company is who they're going to more than likely support. These are all the amendments we passed and met in committee. Thus, this bill should meet all the requirements of my colleagues. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Cesar Masi, Senator San Augustine. On the main motion, Senator Regine Bisco-Lee, you are recognized.
Sujos Masi, Madam Speaker, and good afternoon, colleagues. Madam Speaker, I rise in support of this measure because it is in line with the legislative agenda that we ourselves have set to completely eliminate our reliance on non-renewable energy in the decades ahead. And Madam Speaker, there have been some legitimate concerns that were raised previously, but this new energy production option can certainly help to drive down the appropriations for utilities in our budget laws. Every year they go up. We've already asked agencies to swap out light bulbs to those that use less energy, and every agency is used to shutting down their non-essential air conditioners, computers, and other equipment that draw on this power. We've scrimped, we've saved, but we certainly need to do more. And given the current economic condition of Guam caused by the COVID-19 pandemic, we should empower Government of Guam agencies to respond to anticipated reductions in funding for Government of Guam agencies in future years. Once again, Madam Speaker, both the Guam Legislature and the Leon Guerrero Tenorio administration have reaffirmed a commitment to increase utilizing sustainable and renewable technologies in order to lower utility costs and lessen the reliance on traditional fossil fuels. With the initial passage of Public Law 2962 and the most recent enactment of Public Law 3546, setting a new goal for utilizing renewable technologies at 50% by 2035 and 100% by 2045. And Madam Speaker, I support this measure because it helps us to get to those points that we've already identified, those benchmarks that we've already set for our island, for our community. I thank the author for his leadership on this issue, and passing this measure will give a path forward to some of our largest agencies to make the right fiscal and environmental decisions in the years ahead. So I ask my colleagues for their support of Bill 219-35. Suduas Masi, Madam Speaker.
Buen provecho, Senator Lee. Senator Castro on the main motion.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. If the prime author would yield to a question.
State your question, please.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. If the prime author would clarify for the record that the substituted version has excluded or we removed the local preference provision there in the original bill.
That's correct.
Senator
Yes.
Snoxney.
Yes, Madam Speaker, that's correct.
Okay, Senator Castro, you still have the floor.
Well, thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, notwithstanding the prime author's amendment, having taken into consideration the very strong objections of our colleagues, I'm amenable to that, and I still remain with the prime author as a co-sponsor to the measure. So I rise in support of the bill, notwithstanding the omission of that local provision.
Thank you, Senator Castro. On the main motion, anyone else wishing to speak? Anyone else? If not, Senator San Augustine, you may close. Senator Moylan, guys, please, if you need to speak, raise your hand. Senator Moylan, I will recognize you at this time.
My apologies, Madam Speaker. Just a question to the main author of the bill.
State your question, please.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Just referring to GPA's comment on this bill, in their letter dated October 23rd, the intent of the bill, they do support, of course, to save money for GDOE. And GPA also sees that they are, per Public Law 3546, mandating renewable portfolio standards of 50% by 2035 and 100% by 2045. GPA is currently on track to achieve 25% of that by 2023. In addition, on page 2 of their letter, GPA states that Bill 219 to be potentially over $7 million per year if passed. Their concern is the burden will be borne on GPA ratepayers who are not net metering customers. And it's the opinion of GPA that this would result in an increased rate impacts of approximately 50,000 unfortunate non-metering ratepayers. Bill 219 creates an unfunded mandate by directing a specific group of ratepayers to utilize the system grid at no cost at a full retail rate credit with an impact as noted above. So under that consideration for GPA, I'm wondering if we're in agreement, if the author is in agreement with the letter from GPA or sees it as not an issue in moving forward with this bill.
Thank you,
Thank you,
Senator.
Madam Speaker.
Senator Moreland. Senator San Augustine, would you like to yield to
Yes.
his question regarding GPA's letter?
Madam Speaker, and to my colleague. It's been years that the solar industry has been on Guam. Has the rates gone up because of the solar usage by the private industry and by private homes? No. They come up with every reasons to say, now that we're pushing and we're expecting DOE, UOG. UOG is doing it today. GCC is doing it today. Last term, I asked a very specific question of GPA. When you build a new power plant, if you don't have a reason to build it, would you put a solar farm there? They said yes. I said, do you intend to raise the rates? They said no. So let's come up with other excuses, GPA. I intend to pursue this bill. It meets all the requirements to my colleagues. And then we'll work it from there. Maybe they need to reconsider their power plant. Thank you.
Senator Moreland, you still have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Thank you to the author of the bill. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else on the main motion? Senator Chalayi, you are recognized.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I appreciate that the substitute bill has significantly changed the bill that we were discussing the last time we were in session. For example, it removed all those special exemptions and for under the procurement law, and hopefully now this will proceed in accordance with the procurement law. It will be reviewed by the Attorney General, as all large procurements are. And so I hope that that is the effect of the substitute bill that we received today. That's my very, very quick review. It also removed the special requirements in addition to already existing procurement law requirements that we have a local preference, that it removed preferences on top of that. So hopefully it will result in more competition. That's what we want, is the best competition, the best value for the government of Guam in any procurement. My issue with the bill is that it's been very, very clearly stated to us several times by GPA, because we had at least one public hearing, one roundtable, and I'm not sure if another one, but several hearings. And we also heard it from CCU. The gist from them is that this bill has impacts beyond what we are discussing today. The theory is fantastic. First of all, the solar, that we are going to increase solar in Guam, that's fantastic. Nobody objects to that. I would like to put solar on my house tomorrow, but I can't, pay for it. But we're trying to get solar across the island to be affordable for all, as a means of power for everyone on Guam, and at an affordable rate, not, at an increased cost to all of us. The other great, theory on the bill is that right now, if we're paying $7 million or $5 million to DOE, or, we are appropriating taxpayers' money to pay for GDOE's power bills in the amount of $5 million, for example. This bill says that GDOE will continue to receive the $5 million from the taxpayers, but they will get to use it for other purposes. So of course, that's great. That's great. But the issue is that $5 million, in addition to being paid by taxpayers, is going to result in a $7 million increase to every residential customer across Guam who is not already on the net metering solar system with GDOE, which is the bulk of the customers. They estimate it to be over 50,000 ratepayers are going to see increases. And they were very clear about it. GPA and CCU predict that this will result in increases to ratepayers. They asked us, first they estimated $7 million per year, over $140 million for 20 years. And I think this bill calls for 25 years. We know that GPA has already entered into, contracts and all kinds of obligations that, they've predicted how they're going to, pay for those things, how they're going to expand solar, and we've mandated them to expand solar to 100%. And they've given us their schedule of how they're going to get there. And they say they are on schedule. In fact, they might be ahead of schedule, which is great. And I think we should keep pushing them to do it faster, to do it, to cut our costs, ratepayers' costs, and the sooner the better. But we don't want to do the opposite, which is to increase the cost of ratepayers so that GDOE can get some additional funds. I think we need to look across the government and cut some government spending so that GDOE can get additional funds. Not ask the ratepayers to pay more for power so that GDOE can get that additional funds. I don't want to impact 50,000 current ratepayers, and I don't want to make, net metering unavailable for all the rest of us because, these companies that contract with DOE are going to be able to take advantage of the net metering system and who knows what happens after the impact of that. And what GPA continues to tell us is that we do not know yet. They've asked us to just put a hold on this for a while until they give all of us. They promise to give an analysis. I'm trying to find how they said it themselves in their words, but they told us they would give us analysis and a proposal to reduce energy costs for GDOE and other educational institutions. And I would say if they think that they can cut the costs for those institutions and to give us a proposal, then I don't mind waiting for that. Especially if they can do it within 30 days, then let's hear it and let's weigh our options and not agree to the increase to the ratepayers. And we know that the PUC, the Public Utilities Commission, the PUC, they review every rate that GPA sets, and they also are predicting the same amounts of increase to ratepayers. They say that because they explain to us that GDOE, the government of Guam, making appropriations for government of Guam power bills, has actually subsidized ratepayers since the 70s. Well, that's not ideal, but I prefer to subsidize ratepayers and find another way to get money to GDOE. not on the backs of the ratepayers. This bill is going to interfere with the PUC's rate-making functions. I think they're going to be forced, because they do those studies, and that's what they're asking, is to do the studies. They've got all the engineers, that's what they do when they set rates, is they do all the studies to make sure whether it's going to impact ratepayers or not. Oh, here. So GPA requested that the legislature pause further action on this bill to allow them to prepare recommendations to the CCU, the PUC, and the legislature on, quote, responsible, viable energy path for educational institutions. They've also talked about they're updating their integrated resource plan to achieve at minimum 50% target by 2030 for the solar. They anticipate that plan will be done by June 2021. It will consider different models, including utility rate scale, rooftop, community solar, and solar farming. The plan will also address infrastructure upgrades necessary to integrate all the renewable models in a reliably and sustainable manner. GIDA has also recommended that educational facilities be required to conduct and to compare the financial long-term impact of going to a private solar company versus waiting for GPA to determine which path is the best savings for the government of Guam. The GIDA are financial advisors. And there's another thing in this bill that really kind of bothers me, because it's a provision that says, we're going to continue to pay. It seems to obligate the legislature, just like we are currently obligated to pay bonds, and we are currently obligated to pay the Tizen leases for the GDOE offices and other facilities. We can't get out of those right now, despite having to cut operations by $64 million across the government. We can't get out of those obligations, and this bill is going to put us into a whole new set of obligations that we cannot gain any flexibility on, a continued spending pattern. And it also allows, in this bill, allows DOE to go out for its own borrowing. Funds can be leveraged as a source of payment for the institution to utilize any financing mechanism, such as bonds or any federal loan programs, to raise funds for the institution's facilities maintenance or construction services. I really believe if that GDOE has a proposal like that on the table, that they should bring it to us. We know that most bonds are going to be backed by the full faith and credit of the government of Guam. And we should know about those in advance. It should be the legislature that has the authority to approve or not approve bonds or these long-term obligations by the people of Guam. And if GDOE is ready to go, as they've said, then we should see exactly what they're ready to go on. But, we've just seen this several times, and it's like the theory is the government is so short of cash that we need to pay more to build JFK than if we had just paid it in our own cash, more to build JFK perhaps, and the Tizen offices. Those are the examples. And I think we should try to find a way to cut the expenditures and not to procure it, in the most expensive way. And again, GPA is offering to give us at least a proposal that we can consider that might give us more value. So I just think if this can wait for 30 days or however long GPA says they can come up with an alternative proposal, that it's worth it, because they are the ones we've asked to bring solar across the board, and I do not want solar, if it's going to be more expensive. It's supposed to be less expensive. So it should be the same all across. I wish, the government's going to pay for my solar like it's going to pay for GDOE's. Residential customers deserve that. So we should take care of them and not increase the cost to them, and just say, we're all in this together. GPA, us, and every residential customer, and DOE, and the students. And I said, we can achieve the same purpose by allowing the studies to be done appropriately and allowing, them to give us the best options. We all want the same goal. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Welcome, Senator Therese. Anyone else on the main motion? Senator Parrish, you are recognized.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Yeah, I just want to reinforce some of the comments of the retiring speaker. So I did have a chance to speak to one of the, the experts in the business, and it was mentioned that the legal requirements of such a contract, it'd be very hard to get out of, should there be a problem with it. And so I think that should give us some pause as to whether to engage in this. I think also we need to recognize GPA's role, and that they are committed to reducing consumption of power. And in fact, they put together a 2019 study, and in that study of DOE schools, they audited about 39 schools, and they made some recommendations that would have the greatest impact. And a lot of that was energy conservation measures, and that's one of the things we need to think about. I think we need to implement first before engaging in solar panels, because if we don't try to reduce energy consumption first, then we might end up oversizing the array, the solar panel array, and therefore overspending. So, being that money is a limited commodity here on Guam, I think the steps that we need to take need to be more planned, and it should be coordinated with GPA, who has done a lot of the homework thus far. And the other aspect is that they are on schedule to achieve 50% renewable energy 5 years in advance of the timeline. So 2030 is the scheduled achievement. The other thing is that they are coming up with an integrated resource plan. And in some of the testimony that was provided, they had mentioned that they even encourage savings in schools, that the energy savings in schools can go towards the schools themselves. So they're not one to, basically they're thinking holistically, and I really appreciate that holistic approach, because their focus is about conservation, it's about savings and giving back, not just to ratepayers, but also back to the schools. So I think this approach I feel is a little bit more holistic and sustainable. And I think more eyes on it are better, especially GPA, who has the expertise. I think they've done a lot of work behind this. And so I guess, there are some concerns that I have with the bill, that it could basically all the savings, and in fact, I just want to dispel the myth that the savings are not going to be immediate to the schools, because they still have to pay these leases, right? And so although it's been mentioned that they spend $12 million annually in power, that doesn't equate to immediate savings for the schools. They still have to pay their obligations. And so I think, once we start fragmenting and segmenting, how we're going about this, there could be a potential impact to achieving these renewable portfolio. What is the impact if this were to, pass into law? How would this impact GPA from achieving their 100% renewable portfolio? And I would argue that it would have an impact. And so it's really important that we affirm their leadership in this role, in ensuring that we achieve this 100% renewable portfolio. So these are some of the concerns that I have, and there's also, of course, the concern about shifting costs. Right? Obviously, when we're going to move to renewable energy, we're going to talk about decrease in revenues for GPA, which has to be integrated more slowly, right? Shocks to the system are never good, and it's important that we take this gradually and with a planned and integrated approach. The other thing that was not that needs to be also addressed is the use of the distribution system. So, yes, so all the benefits would be reserved for the institutions, but there's no talk about utilizing the distribution system or the impact that would have. But although there is something in the bill that would address that, I think that's important to really have GPA look at be a main player in this, and to ensure that they reach these renewable standards. So that's, yeah, so I think, supporting GPA and all their efforts, I think would, in the long run, would ensure that we reach these benchmarks passed into public law. And I do appreciate the author's changes, but I still think that, if we're going to put money towards this, it should benefit everybody and not just, the few. And we need to really consider, especially these leaseback programs. They're very hard to break. Should these institutions decide with or go with a particular vendor, and it comes out to be a bad deal, we're going to be left holding the bag. And I very much would like to have more of, GPA and other people, legislature to, see this through. So I think that's what I have to offer. Situats Masi.
Anyone else on the main motion? Senator Clinton Rangel, you're recognized on the main motion.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I rise in support of this measure, of this bill. I think this is it's a really good bill. I know there's concerns that have been raised by GPA, CCU, and the PUC. Particularly, there's this assertion that this will somehow guarantee an increase in rates to other ratepayers. First of all, if rates are to be increased, they're increased to all ratepayers, including NEM customers. NEM customers get the same power rate. The difference is their power is offset by whatever they feed back into the utility grid via the power they feed back in. But they still pay the same rate that everyone else pays for power. Secondly, a lot of the discussion GPA, the CCU has had, to be quite frank, is disputed. So particularly, they talk about this avoided cost or cost shifting. The assertion is that the cost is somehow shifted to other members of the grid. Other people have done studies to say that that's not the case. The Berkeley lab completed a study on the value of solar, and basically in their study they find that the bottom line is that a lot of the assertions of cost shifting do not take into effect the full value of solar. And what that value is a reduction in transmission losses. That's one of the values that aren't properly measured. Transmission losses make up a huge part of the loss of any power company. What transmission losses are, simply put, is when you run electricity over miles and miles of land, that electricity loses power. You lose efficiency across distance. So with solar generation, power is more localized in the area where the solar panels are picking up energy and feeding it back into the system. It reduces transmission costs and transmission losses. That's one of the things that aren't factored in. In addition to that, so there's a lot of talk about, trust the experts. GPA and CCU are the experts. We should trust them. They're the experts. Well, let's take a look at what some of the experts have told us already in the past. And I'll use one prime example. The new power plant that they are going to build, they initially told us it will not require an increase in rates. Now they are saying it will require an increase in rates. Again, these are the experts. That power plant is going to cost $3 billion over the course of that term. You want to talk about a long lease, a long term, or a long contract you're locked into that you can't get out of? That's a long contract you can't get out of. $3 billion worth. Make no mistake about it, that $3 billion will be borne on the backs of ratepayers. In addition to that, GovGuam subsidized it by buying the land, the private land that the power plant is going to be built on, to a tune of $10 million. So we bought a piece of land, private land, for $10 million so that GPA could then go out and then find a private contractor to build a power plant at a cost of $3 billion, and it's going to increase the rates, and we don't get any renewable energy out of it. Let's trust the experts. So with that, Madam Speaker, I don't buy the argument that they say that this will somehow increase costs when we know for a fact that the policies they've been doing do increase costs. We know for a fact that the LEAC rate, which is tied to oil and fuel, is the number one reason for the increase in costs. And if you use solar energy, you eliminate the volatility of the fuel market that we have no control over. With that, Madam Speaker, I'd like to say again, I rise in support of this bill, and I ask and urge my colleagues to support the measure as well. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
You're very welcome, Senator Rajan. Anyone else on the main motion? If not, Senator San Augustine, you may close.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, my colleagues, it's a beautiful day outside, and we are at the cusp of greatly benefiting from one of the elements that we are so blessed to have living in this part of the world. That is the sun. Bill 219 is a measure that will help us achieve our goal in going greener, using cleaner energy for our government. Bill 219 will allow our island's educational institutions, namely DOE, UOG, GC, and the charter school, to avail of solar energy production through a power purchase agreement or leaseback, or neither, and will allow the savings of such to be utilized for other purposes. There is a great savings potential that will result in the passage of this bill. With just DOE, where their annual power bill is averages $12 million, the savings would be great. So the saving is going to happen for these institutions, just as it is for many homes, Catholic schools, and commercial buildings in Guam already using a PPA method or direct purchase method. I ask my colleagues to support this measure as another way we can save money and redirect it to other much-needed resources, especially during these challenging times. Let's do right by our schools, community, island, and right by our world by passing this bill. Sijus Masi, Madam Speaker, and I ask my colleagues for their support. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator San Augustine. Can you please move the bill down to the third reading voting file?
Madam Speaker, I ask that it be moved to the voting file.
On that motion to move Bill 219-35 COR to the voting file, any objections? Seeing or hearing none. Motion carries. We'll move right along, colleagues. We are now on Bill 312-35 LS. Senator Mary Torres, I will recognize you at this time.
Madam Speaker, malagos ng BPG sige papay listo, por favor, ang ginsinya.
Okay. On that motion to move Bill 312-35 LS to the bottom of the agenda, are there any objections? Seeing or hearing none. Motion carries. Senator Regine Biscoli, I apologize. I'll take a moment's recess. Himina 35 na legislatura in Guam is back from recess. At this time, I'm just going to recognize Senator Joseph Augustine, if I may, on behalf of Senator Lee.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I ask that Bill 373-35 be set aside and that be set aside.
On the motion to set aside Bill 373-35 COR, are there any objections? Seeing or hearing none, motion carries. Senator San Augustine, I will acknowledge you again.
And Madam Speaker, being that we're now going to be entering into bills that require the Committee of the Whole, we have Bill 353-35, Bill 400-35, Bill 396-35, Bill 415-35. I'd ask that those 4 bills be heard on Wednesday so that I can communicate with the Department of Administration, BBMR, and
Senator, can you go ahead and just add notwithstanding to move and to resolve in the Committee of the Whole so that when we come in at 9 o'clock,
Okay.
Or 10 o'clock on Wednesday morning,
Right.
that all the bills,
So notwithstanding the House rules, that we resolve to the Committee of the Whole, and we'll begin with Bill, on Wednesday at 10 o'clock, we'll begin with Bill 353-35, and after that, then we're just going to go down the line with the next 3 other bills. Madam Speaker,
4.
it's total of 4 bills.
Yes. Okay, on that motion, are there any objections? Senator Marsh Tachino, do you have a point of
I
information?
have a point of inquiry. So
State your question.
yes, Siduous Masi, Maske Halu. So we're putting aside one of the bills, but we all know that we're being very mindful of time. I'm just wondering if there's any ability to come back to 373 later on today?
Senator Marsh Tachino, on the indulgence that the author of the bill is at a scheduled appointment.
Yes, but it's my understanding, and I don't know the full situation,
Senator,
but
it's
it's
3
my
o'clock in the
understanding
afternoon.
that they are coming back.
It's 3 o'clock in the afternoon. So I'm asking, the motion was considered passed, that we just set it aside until the author gets back. But at Wednesday morning, we will start. So it doesn't lose that place. We'll finish the motions. And then after that, 373 will be after that. Okay,
Yeah,
on that motion, or do you have an objection to that motion?
Well, no, we're just so mindful of time, and to lose 2 hours today, I'm just trying to see if there's anything that we can do in those 2 hours.
The 2 remaining bills that not need a committee of the whole, but the authors have asked that the bill be set aside. So please, Senator Marsh, on the motion, you can object if you want. There has been a motion on the floor. All those in favor of the Senator San Augustine motion, are there any objections? Seeing or hearing none, motion carries. We are in recess till 10 o'clock Wednesday morning.